Welcome back, everybody. I'm surprised to see the positive feedback I got on the last video. I actually really enjoyed some of the feedback that you guys gave. Shout out to the person who pointed out about getting nervous in front of a microphone. I don't know if it's much of a nervousness thing for me, but it's just whenever I'm put in a microphone and I'm just kind of by myself. It's like, it's an entirely different scenario. I don't think it's so much of a nervousness thing. It's like I don't have anybody to engage ideas with and discourse around, right? Because when I'm talking to somebody else, I can get my points out very clearly and concisely, but if it's by myself, it's like all my ideas just kind of fade. Maybe it is a nervousness thing, maybe it's just because I want to become self-conscious. It's I get more focused on, me being in front of a microphone than actually thinking about those ideas, and that could just be the case, which I'm okay with that. And I think like a couple of people unsubscribe, but that's normal with any kind of upload post, right? I'm an irregular uploader. When I do upload, some people might have even forgotten they've even subscribed to my channel, okay? And so you have like these dead subscribers that, they subscribed like half a year ago or something, and they find out they're still subscribed to this person, they don't even know who, and they just see me pop up on their feed, and they're just like, I don't know who this is, I'm just gonna unsub. You know what I mean? And so, a couple of people unsubscribed, got surprisingly a one new sub, I think, and then 2 unsubs or something like that. I think that's just pretty typical, right? Because unfortunately, because I'm just such an inconsistent uploader, it's hard to basically say, like, the people who originally subbed with me even remember that they even subbed to me in the first place. They could have just come from a debate or something like that, and they just kind of want to hear the opposition's point of view, but I haven't done a debate in like 6 months, so it's like, they just completely forgot about who I was, and they just kind of unsubscribed quietly. And that's totally fine. I'm not too twisted about that. Like, again, like, I recognize I'm a small channel, and it doesn't hurt my feelings and all that sorts of stuff. It's just like, it's just kind of par for the course, right? I'm thankful to the people who actually do listen to what I have to say and, kind of share the ideas, is because at the end of the day, it's like, I'd rather, entertain and kind of focus on the people that I already have and just kind of share ideas with them, because I think, that's much more fruitful. I think it's better to, just recognize that this is just more of a dialogue, just me throwing out my 2 cents on what I think is true, what's not true, right? This isn't just like me pretending that I'm talking to a real large audience, right? I recognize my community is small, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. Yeah, and one of the things, I remember one person, this is no call out to one person who commented that, like, about a cringe post that I made or whatever, like a while ago. It's like, if you're subscribed to this channel, you just want to hear a different opinion, that's totally fine. You don't have to agree with everything that I say. Like, I'd honestly be surprised if, like, the vast majority of people in any community agree with whatever that content creator says, like, most of the time, right? I'd be really surprised by that, right? Just remember, when you're following me and you just want to engage with the ideas, right? I'm more interested in the discussion. You don't have to agree with everything that I say to engage in a good and faithful discussion about the topics that I'm saying, right? That's good enough for me, right? So an interesting topic that I kind of wanted to talk about today was I wanted to talk about the concept of actioncelism. Okay, most of the people in my immediate circle already know what that is because they've watched how kind of other leftists engage and talk with a whole bunch of other things. And so actioncelism. What is actioncelism? I'll go ahead and explain it to you. Okay. I noticed a pattern within the left, okay? When I was on the political right, when I was a libertarian, there was no need for action. It almost felt like it was an impossibility. There was no point in doing and all sorts of stuff, right? When I was in, like, the libertarian spaces and all that sorts of stuff, people would just be like, well, human nature is going to prove that the left is retarded, and, even if they do something, it's just going to fail, and, we're going to be back to square one, and then, nature balances itself out. There was an incredibly passive nature about the politics of the right the left just doesn't have. The left, for some reason, is engaged in active politics or activism, so I'm not really the most surprised towards that, right? It's kind of an interesting psychology that I noticed about the right is, like, they're not interested in acting. I mean, you got, like, the fascist circles, which are just kind of psychotic, and, they want to just, like, go after leftists or some deranged shit, and they were always crazy as hell. But the thing is that, like, with most right-wing politics, just watch any, like, right-wing politics. It's like, watch Sargon of Akkad, watch any of these, like, right-wing personalities, and it's a lot of passive politics. It's like, the way they talk about it is, like, some eternal state of nature and a return to it, or, it's kind of like, oh, communism is this thing that contradicts human nature, and so to impose upon reality is it works for a period, but barely, and then nature resets it, and, the natural order is restored, okay? There's a passive nature to right-wing politics, and it could just be the nature of being a conservative that lends itself to this kind of logical thinking, but, here's the problem with the left, okay? Because, like, when I first entered the left, I'm not going to pretend I fully understood the left, okay? The politics and the psychology of the left are entirely different than it is on the right. Okay, and so I came up with this term actioncelism because I think it perfectly describes like a lot of the mentality of the left. I've even seen these kinds of people in my circle. Okay, so what is an action cell? An action cell is somebody's like, oh my god, I got to action right this very second. I got to direct action. I got to activate. I got to activize them, bro. I got to do activism. I got to act. And you know they don't refine their logical thinking. They're more focused on acting rather than they are on refining theory or ideas. And I'm not trying to like say, oh, just be a theory cell and just kind of always read books, but like, you know, you have people who have like, you know, a group of 5 friends and they want to act. And I'm like, dude, what are you going to do? What are you and your 5 friends going to realistically do to make meaningful progress towards anything? Oh, you're going to implement universal health care or something like that? Are you going to, you know, do a worker strike, right? You know, and so like, you know, you have this chicken and the egg problem with action cells is that because they always want to act, right? They can never stick to one group and work on anything consistently because they're always hopping between groups. It's because they get frustrated that nothing's getting done because their group size is too small, and then they leave because they can't do anything, and so the group size gets even smaller, and you know they hop into another circle, they get infatuated with it, and they're like, oh my god, this group is so much different than last stuff. They're actually acting this go around. They're gonna do something, bro. They're gonna organize, and then you know, once they realize like, you know, some, you know, really bold claim, like, you know, I've seen it happen a million times, and maybe they want universal health care or something like that, right? And when nobody's able to do anything, because it's even a Discord server with like 300 people or something like that, they're not doing anything meaningful, they all start lashing out at each other, they become angry that like, oh my god, bro, nobody's acting in here except for me, only me. I'm only one doing all the actioning work, and, you know, everybody else is just doing nothing, you know what I mean? And so, you know, they lash out, and then the community implodes, and all the action cells run, and they go join off to another group that, you know, they become infatuated with again, and the cycle repeats, and they're consistently just jumping from one group to another. I even had one person in that, right? He was subscribed to my channel, okay? You know, they're like, oh my god, Alistair's group is just doing literally nothing. They're not acting hard enough. You know, I'm gonna go do another group, and I'm gonna do real action and organize. I'm gonna do the real action, the real movement, and all that sort of stuff. You see this with all the Marxist circles. They're always talking about forming the real movement or the real vanguard party, and it's all a purity test of who's the most Marxistic of them all, rather than engaging in meaningful ideas and discourse of what action is probably most appropriate for it. None of them do this stuff. They're all interested in acting, and you know, you can kind of see this with the dynamics of any Marxist group. They're all just trying to outprove each other who's more Marxistic than another, not whether any of the ideas that any of these people have are good. Okay, you know. And none of it. It's just how can they act at this very moment, and you know, and do something. It's not even like it's like a bull in a china shop. It's like they're just consistently trying to do something, but they don't know what they want to do. I must act, but I have no theory. You know, that screaming painting. It's like, you know, maybe it's better instead. And this is why I kind of took a different approach, especially with my channel and my own community. It's like, no, I don't want you to act. In fact, you want to go act, go join another group. That's totally fun. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to be disinfatuated with that group. You're going to start lashing out, and they're going to jump and hop to another group, and you're going to do this endlessly. Okay. So, you know, here's the thing. What do we do now? Okay. Because, you know, I could talk about action cells being stupid and all that sorts of stuff, but here's what I do. Okay. The alt-right had it right at the beginning. And I'm not trying to say, oh, we need to copy meme culture, memetics, and all that sort of stuff. That was kind of a goofy thing, okay? Memetics was fucking stupid, okay? You know, back in 2016 and 2017, when the alt-right was using dog whistles to get their ideas out there, okay? How about a different one, okay? How about focusing and refining ideas to be told and appealing to people's interest as opposed to just, you know, demanding action right this very second? How about we talk about something substantive, right? And so that's one of the things I kind of focused on, you know, my immediate circles. Like, I'm not going to tell you I'm doing anything. I'm not doing anything. There's nothing I can do as an individual or even my community, even if I were to organize all my immediate circle, right? There's very limited things that I can do, and I say that right out the front. So what we need to do instead is focus on spreading ideas, you know, because the thing is that, you know, with actioncelism, okay, here's going to be the eternal problem with actioncelism. And the Democrat Party made this mistake massively in the 2024 election. They tried to fit as many people under one umbrella with too many different opinions to try and get them to act and do one thing. That's not how that works, okay? You know, there has to be a coherent set of ideas that people agree on in the first place so you can form a community around it in the first place. And unfortunately, there's just too many different opinions. And I'm just not saying, like, you know, we need to do some popular fun and tolerate differences, but the thing is that the thing is that, like, nobody's willing to have, like, an authentic discussion of ideas and refine ideas to figure out where we're going to go in the first place. And so, you know, you have people, like, hopping in and out of circles, and, you know, it's just like that last person in my server. It's like, you know, as soon as they action cell and they try to join another community, they get infatuated for about a week, and then when nothing happened, they got through a temper tantrum, and then they left to repeat the cycle all over again. You know, the action cell is in a perpetual self-inflicted torment of where they're just consistently trying to action no matter what group they hop. But ironically enough, when they tried to start their own group, right, and everybody thought exactly like them, they're like, oh, nothing can be done because you're only a group with 10 people, I'm going to leave and hop to another group. It's kind of incredibly difficult to do anything, okay? It's funny, because I told her, I was like, you know, you action cell to my community and said, oh, I'm going to bounce because this group isn't doing anything. I need to do real organizing, you know? And, you know, they couldn't start a group because, unironically, they dealt with everybody else who's an action cell. It says, like, you know, oh, this group's too small, nothing's going to do anything. So I'm just going to jump to another group and, you know, I'm going to do some real organizing, unlike all the other parties who do nothing, you know, and they just talk in theory. So at least with theory cells, they're like, yeah, I'm just going to sit in my armchair and do my own thing and just kind of stay in the corner and do nothing. I'm not pretending to do anything, right? Action cells will get mad at theory cells for not doing anything, but then they will not do anything themselves because they're consistently bouncing from circle to circle, not organizing, ironically enough. They'll demand people organize, but then never actually organize themselves. And it's just this perpetual feedback loop of just stupidity, watching action cells just consistently, like, you know, act this way. And so that's why it's like nowadays it's like you might be like, oh, Alistair's using Warframe footage and then talking into a microphone, not even doing a whole lot of video editing, is because honestly it's like, you know, the left is so busy trying to action cell, and as a whole it wants to do something very right this very second, rather than realize that, you know, take a step back, look into a mirror and look at your position. We're not popular, okay? The broader left is not popular. Our ideas are half-baked, okay? The right is able to rout us at every opportunity, and you have to rely on censorship to actually keep your opponent's ideas in line, okay? This is not sustainable. It was barely sustainable when the left was the majority, okay? And now we're not the majority, okay? Now's the time to step back, look in the mirror, and reflect at our own ideas and figure out how to move from there, okay? That's why it's like, you know, nowadays, it's like a lot of people said I'm a lot more chill now. It's mostly because I recognize the futility of the left and the flaws of the left and realize we're not going anywhere, okay? And so what we can do is we can start talking about ideas and figuring out, you know, recognizing the situation we're in right now and figuring out how to act in it, okay? The United States is in an empire in decline, okay? The cost of living keeps going up. The average house price is $500,000. You know, average car price is like $40,000 or something like that. It just keeps going up, okay? People are being squeezed between high cost of living and low pay, and they're being gaslit by both the two bourgeois parties, okay? That there's plenty of stuff to talk about and kind of figure out how to strategize, but too many people on the left would rather cope about it. It's like, oh, the action cell, and they get upset. They just engage in third worldist cope, saying, oh, it's because the Western worker or the American worker is too bourgeois. I can name 3 channels off the top of my head who are basically wages, and all they do is talk about wage rage stuff, okay? You know, Millennial Steam, Philosophical Gaming, Marx Games, okay? And these people aren't communist. I'm not going to pretend that they're communist. You know, they're just talking about the wage rage, you know, that they have to deal with, how jobs don't pay enough to actually get by. But there's plenty of sentiment to tap into, to just have a discussion and share an experience. But, you know, the left is just so absolutely stupid that it just, you know, the political sphere is just separate from actual real experience, that they just don't know how to actually, you know, meaningfully talk to people, you know, share an experience with a normie. Jesus, you probably share more in common with him than, like, you know, the people and the political activists you hang out with, which are all upper middle class. Like, I'm going to be real with you. The biggest eye-opener between, like, the normie and the political space was, like, when I streamed on Rumble, and a guy came in my chat, and we just kind of, you know, it was only, like, 3 viewers on Rumble. Let's be honest here. He's a Christian nationalist or whatever, and we just started talking about how the cost of rent's insane, right? You have more in common with the average normie who's living paycheck to paycheck than you do with any of your rich friends in these political circles. And I'm not saying don't engage in politics, but, you know, one of the things I didn't realize is, like, I was talking to the wrong audience. I was talking to the wrong group of people. But actioncelism, geez, no, that's the thing that we're here for. Actioncelism is one of the things that I've seen that's just, you know, bound up the left, is because they always have the need to act. Even in college, there's this left. It's like, I don't care about theory. I just want to protest, bro. I gotta act right this very second. Otherwise, the world's gonna implode. Okay. Well, that's kind of the thing, okay? You're going against an enemy that was a political minority that refined its thoughts for the last 10 years because they were a political minority, and they were able to make their ideas become the majority, okay? That's what you're going against as a leftist, okay? You know, I still remember the early days of the right, okay? Sargon of Akkad and these smaller channels, Gamergate, and a lot of these people who flew to the right is because they got tired of the hypocrisy and the stupidity of the left, okay? And this has gone on for 10 years, okay? We're at the point where, you know, we as leftists, we as communists, if you're one of those kinds of people, and the people in my audience are, it's no big deal, you know, you don't have to listen to words I'm saying, is that it's time for us to step back and look in the mirror and start evaluating ourselves and figuring out what our position is in the world and like how to act in it and refine our ideas to act. You know, now is the time for passive politics to work on ideas and sharing them, okay? Do you remember when the alt-right used to go around like spouting about like the 13% of the population committing 50% of the crimes like autistically in the weirdest places? Well, that's, you know, forget about all the memetics. There's no magic to it. All they did was quite literally memorize statistics that are relevant to their interest, and they autistically spammed at any point they possibly can to spread their ideas when they didn't have a media majority, when they were the minority in the early 2010s, okay? They were very clever about getting their talking points out despite being censored, okay? We're in that position. That's why I'm not too focused on action selling. It's because the fact that I see it as a waste of time. I mean, if you want to join an action group and you want to go do activism, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, recognize that you're not in the majority. And so, unfortunately, it's like, you know, your abilities to do anything are incredibly limited, okay? And so the most important thing that I want you to take away from this video, if you're a leftist, okay, is that stop acting. I want you to pretend you're in a prison. And I'm not saying like, oh, yeah, this is not some foreshadowing to Donald Trump's martial law. Like, you know, that's going to happen. We can't do much about this, okay? I want you to pretend you're maybe in a glass cage, okay? And you have people outside of you. And you can't do anything but talk to them, okay? There's nothing else you can do. You're a prisoner, okay? You can't act, you can't do anything. It's because you're bound in chains, and all you can do is talk, okay? That's how you have to see politics from the perspective of the left. You can't do anything. You're bound up because you're not popular, okay? And all you can do is appeal to people's interest, find common interest, and share ideas. That's all you can do, okay? So that's the main topic of this video. It's more or less talking about actioncelism, is because it's something that's holding back the left, is because they will literally cope about it, go after people who talk about ideas, because the fact is they don't want to engage in original thought, and you know, they will cope about it. The cope's coming to an end, okay? You know, actioncelism is not viable now, okay? We're not the majority, and so we have to stand in the minority, developing our ideas from a new standpoint so we can reach the majority. That's all it is, you know? Again, you would be really surprised. You can go on to the third world as cope route about that we're in the minority and just say it's because everyone's a labor aristocrat. And you can look at the numbers and cope about that while, like, you know, the standard of living continually goes down and the resentment's there. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, this is your position. This is our reality. And so we have to find a way to navigate to it. Otherwise, we're just going to get forgotten and we're just going to perpetually be a minority while, you know, we get fascism. I mean, you want to call it fascism. I don't know if most people would call it fascism, but, you know, Trump is going to go through with martial law and do the mass deportations. You don't have much of a choice. You don't have the majority. I mean, you can do some petty protesting, but right now is the time for ideas, because, you know, if you want your side to outlast being the minority, like, you're gonna have to take a note from the alt-right and forget the mimetic shit, is because that shit's so stupid and that's gimmicky. Remember how the alt-right basically got its ideas out even when it was in the minority 10 years ago. Okay, take that to heart. You know, if you don't, that's fine. You'll be back eventually. It's because you're gonna realize I'm right. And that's not me trying to be patronizing. This is just kind of a fact of reality. And it's like, you know, most people, you know, who don't recognize this factor coping. You know, I'm just a little bit ahead of the curve on this and want to share my thoughts to those, and share my words to the ears of the wise here. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and share it around us, because again, the whole point of this is, like, I'm not pretending to be some leader or some action group or whatever, and I'm going to lead a protest or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just here to share ideas, and if you like it and share. Thanks for watching.